Our next speaker is the CEO of Jpmorgan Securities, and I've heard from a whole bunch of you today already that what's great about this conference is we're hearing from movers and shakers in different channels and listening to their perspective on things. So I think it's going to be terrific to hear Chris Harvey's take on where he sees the industry today and where it's going. The chance to have JPMorgan's name and brand out there in the audience and the things he's doing with it right now are terrific. And I think anybody who talks to him will see that he's a real straight shooter, which, by the way, I would say about everybody, including Dave Genn and Tim Oden at Schwab and the guys from Ameriprise. Really, people, those who talk straight are the ones who are going to make something in this business. And I have to say that I am completely confident that Chris will be a real mover and shaker. He's new to our business, but he's been in this world for a long time, and I think we're all going to be very pleased with today. Chris Harvey.
Thanks, Tony. I'd like to start just by thanking you, Tony, and your whole AdvisorHub team. Thanks for hosting this great event. Thanks for giving me a few minutes to share with you some thoughts about the industry as a relative newcomer and a few things that we're doing at JPMorgan, and for creating really the online community for advisors to learn, to connect, to take advantage of the thought leadership that you provide. I check AdvisorHub twice a day and count myself lucky to be among your 180,000 unique users, so thank you. So with that out of the way, I want to give you a quick background on myself. I'll come back to JPMorgan in a second. So I grew up in Columbus, Ohio. My mom is an educator. My dad really had two careers. The first half of his career he spent working at two different iconic American companies that fell on very difficult times. One was Eastman Kodak, and the other was Xerox. So I grew up hearing stories of life inside a big company. And one story I remember vividly, I'm not sure which of the two it was, my dad came home shaking his head. He was an officer grade 26 at this company, very stratified officer structure, with a policy manual and rules and privileges for officers at every grade. And in the office next to him was a guy who was a 26 as well. And the rule was that if you were a 26, you could have a reproduction oil painting on your wall. Not an original. You had to be a 27 for that. But the lowly 26s can only have a reproduction. Well, the guy in the office next to my dad was married to a woman who was a painter. So the question became, can he have one of his wife's paintings on the wall? So they form a committee at this company to review this, and the committee met monthly for 7 months and came back, and then the answer was no. And so when I asked my dad about, what caused this particular company went bankrupt, what was it? It wasn't about products, it wasn't about services. They had the products and the services. He said the day that they made that decision was the day they went bankrupt. And it was just a matter of time before it all played out. So the first half of his career was hearing about these things, and then the second half of his career was in the venture capital business. And small companies, entrepreneurs, innovators, and a lot of failure there too. But these folks failed trying. It led to some interesting summer jobs. One of the companies they invested in that my brother and I spent a month working at, this guy had figured out that in the chicken farming business, there's a lot of spoilage where it's literally henpecking. The chickens will peck at each other. And this guy figured out that if you insert into their little chicken eyes these pink contact lenses, the chickens become very docile. And so my brother and I spent a summer. The little problem, the chickens don't particularly like having the lenses inserted in their eyes. And so that was, and the company never made it. But like I said, these companies, they failed trying. So I grew up hearing about big companies, hearing about small companies, and what I'm all about is trying to make a big company work like a small company. So it's really interesting that after all these years, I find myself really focused on that. Professionally, I've spent 34 years at JPMorgan. I've done a couple different things. I started out as a junior banker, kind of briefcase carrier, memo writer, to a very accomplished senior banker on the corporate side. I learned an enormous amount from him, really my mentor. Then I went to a series of product jobs, mostly in markets, foreign exchange, fixed income, and emerging markets. Then I did this new product job for a while, then went to Japan. How many people have been to Japan? If you've spent much time there, it's a deeply interesting place. I learned an enormous amount there. And then I came back from Japan to lead the Latin American private banking business. I learned a lot in both of those international experiences. First, I learned what it's like to be different. I learned what it's like to be the outsider, the person who looks different. You don't know the rules and the lingo, or even the actual language, and you need to assimilate. You need to be true to yourself, but also need to figure out what works within their system. And then I also learned the importance of standing by clients and colleagues when things get tough. Whether that was in Japan when the ground was literally shaking, or in Venezuela when the bullets are literally flying. Standing by your clients when times get tough, standing by your teammates when it's hard to come to work every day, it really is what people remember and over time reward you for it. So great experiences across client, product, and geography. We're very fortunate at JPMorgan to have 4 channels that face off with different client segments based on how they want to buy in the domestic U.S. wealth market. UInvest, we've recently launched, is a very low-cost technology platform. We're frankly late to the game here, but I'm confident that we'll, and I've already brought some great stuff to the market. And so for clients who want to be served online with a low-cost, frankly, essentially free platform, this will be a great job. I think the folks at Chase really run the best business at JPMorgan, and the Chase Wealth Management business is no exception. Please visit our branch around the corner at 57th Street. I was down there earlier this morning. I know the branch manager there, Nuelia Stermasi. She had been at 1251 6th Avenue between 49th and 50th. She's great. She and her team are outstanding, and they await you with account opening forms. They're open till 6. A lot of wealthy people want to be served in their neighborhood. And this group does an outstanding job because of service and enormous locational advantage. Then we got the private bank. I spent 5 years there leading our business in Latin America. It's a global business. It's a real strong team model, and clients really love the institution of JPMorgan. Then you got Jpmorgan Securities, the group that I had the honor to join about 18 months ago. Clients, they really like the JPMorgan brand. Their primary affiliation is with the advisors who serve them. So it's great to have the full commitment to clients in the U.S. the way that they want to be served. For us at JPMorgan Securities, we see the landscape kind of evolving in 2 different ways. The big firms with many thousands of advisors, they have the advantages of scale, but to us, from what we hear from some people, that even if you're a star, you're a cog in a big wheel. And they're running it based on a report back at headquarters, a little bit less based on what happens in the field. At the other end, you've got the independents who do a great job in terms of really serving clients well, and the model's great when it works. At the same time, they have their challenges of brand, reach, scale, potentially balance sheet. No issues in terms of technology. I think the turnkey technology that some of the independents have beats the big firms. So between the big and the small, we're very confident that there's a space for a firm that both brings to bear the strengths of a boutique. It's small, it's fast, it's personable, we can finish each other's sentences, it's fun. People answer their phone on one ring. That's what small means. But it's inside the exoskeleton of a powerful global firm, brand, reach, and balance sheet. We're probably there 4, maybe 5 days a week. We really got to be there 7, but that's what we're about, and that's JPMorgan Securities. This whole wealth management landscape is certainly one well studied and well documented, and those of you who've shaped it and built it know it far better than I do. So a lot of this is is sort of well covered and well documented. But I would just like to note a few factors that, to me, as a relative newcomer, clearly identify U.S. wealth management as a landscape ripe for change and significant disruption. First, it's big. $80 trillion of personal wealth, $47 trillion of investable assets. It's an enormous market. Compared to Latin America, where I spent the previous 5 years, personal wealth is $4 trillion, investable assets is less than half of it, and 62% of that is in 2 countries. So it's a big market. It's a fragmented market. Nobody really has more than 8 or 9% market share. Basic statement, we don't make anything. There's no physical product. There isn't a supply chain, or Amazon has to actually deliver something, right? Our business could be easily disrupted because of the lack of the physical nature of a lot of what I'll call real businesses. Fourth would be the very mixed level of customer satisfaction. Only 55% of high net worth families are happy with their wealth provider. And then a couple others, just the significant wealth transition from the baby boom to the next generation means it's just going to change anyway. You can't get out of the way of the wall of money that will change hands and likely look for different ways to buy. And then obviously, as we've seen over the course of the last 2 days, the potential for a market turn. And I think that would be a big shakeout in any business, but in a business that's got those other attributes, it's clearly a market that's, I think it's anybody's ball game, is probably the best way to think about that. So what retail financial services is going through is very similar to what other capital markets and businesses in general have gone through. There's been a shift in the power balance from provider to client, driven by natural market forces, technology, and regulation. Early product dominance by the innovators has been replaced by sort of product consistency and ubiquity. Everybody's got them. And the next phase was increased transparency and competition based on price. Product sufficiency was just assumed. Now, the prices in the products are really largely the same. It's what some people would call a commodity business. I'm going to want to come back to that later. But there's certainly limited competitive advantage to product and price advantages. This is the healthy but painful transition of value towards the end client. So now we win and lose not based on who's got alternative investments, because everybody sort of has them to one degree or another. But we win and lose much more based on a client-by-client understanding, judgment, and advice by the advisor who serves them. To us, it's a great time to be in the business. Advice, judgment, and service, those are central values to who we are at JPMorgan as a company. It's also what people do. And I want to shift now to talk about the role of technology, but I think it's critically important to recognize that this is a craft that I think will be one of the last businesses that, done well, is replaced by technology. When I was in the foreign exchange business, we built a client-facing website. Now, this was in 1997, so that was a long time ago in internet years. And the website did 3 things. It would, you could type in Germany, and it would go get you all the research that we had on Germany. It was a charting package. Foreign exchange clients love to look at the technical charts. And so it would make charts. And then it would do simple transactions, spot, forward, and options transactions. So research, charting, transactions. When we rolled this platform out first to the sales force and then to clients, we called it the PGS, Pretty Good Salesperson, because that's what a pretty good salesperson does. And the reaction of our sales force was very interesting. The bottom third were threatened by it. Some changed jobs, some left the industry entirely. The middle third raised their game. And the top third loved it. They never liked going to hunt down research on Germany and faxing it to clients. They preferred the machine to streamline the lower value added task, do it automatically, turn it into data. They loved it. That played out in less than 12 months, that transition I just described. So for sure, we're seeing a transition of the machines taking over roles that were previously done by people. And I think there's a nostalgia around this that comes from everyone who's never worked on a farm, right? We look at this transition and think, oh, it must be painful, but obviously we went from people plowing a furrow with their hands to a horse, to a tractor. Food production went up, hunger went down, fewer farmers, more food, better society for most everybody, including, frankly, most of the farmers. And this is just what technology does. So, from the time when the printing press replaced the scribe, through now and through the things that we do, yeah, it's bad for you if you're a bad scribe with illegible handwriting and lousy customer service, right? But I think now we're even more focused on it because the machines are getting better at a faster rate, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and we're also in this room more acutely aware of it because now the machines are starting to do what people with college degrees and graduate degrees do. I've got a friend who's a lawyer, told me last weekend that they had just taken on a case. They received 72 boxes of documents, where previously 8 lawyers would go into a room for 3 weeks. They've now have fed this box of documents into a machine that cranked out a case narrative over the weekend. I've got another friend who's a radiologist. There's a huge hype wave and counter wave in the radiology profession between the radiologists and the artificial intelligence machines. But for sure, the machine's better at figuring out whether that is or isn't a hairline fracture. And it's no different in our space as financial advisors. I do think, though, that to frame this as people versus machines, and that there's some sort of Terminator 2 type scenario that I think inaccurately portends an early and grim future, sort of misses the point, which I'll share my thoughts on with you now. Just as a show of hands, how many people here have already taken a ride in a driverless car? Okay. Who thinks they'll take a ride in a driverless car in the next year? How about the next 3 years? 5 years? Who thinks they'll never ride in a driverless car? Some people never do it. Did you know there was a time when people wouldn't ride in an elevator without an elevator operator? The elevator with the buttons you could push yourself came into being around 1900 in New York City. And no operator. People hated it. People were terrified of it. You wanted a person in there. In fact, it was 45 years where there were people operating elevators where we didn't need them. It took a strike. There was a strike in New York City across all unions in 1945, including the elevator operators. And that's really when people realized, I guess I can do this. I can push that button by myself. The cycle time's happening faster and faster. I mentioned 1997 when we rolled out that client-facing website. Something else happened in 1997 in terms of the people versus machines that I'm sure you remember. It was when the Deep Blue computer beat Garry Kasparov. It's the first time a computer beat the reigning world champion in chess in a regulation scenario, sort of chess tournament. Many people made dire predictions about what this meant for the world, certainly in the chess world. And then it wasn't long after, I think it was 2010 or 11, that Watson computer won at Jeopardy. Right, I remember that. So if your career aspirations are professional chess player or game show contestant, yes, a machine can do your job much better than you. I started getting into chess for about 4 years, ending about 2 years ago. One of our kids got really into chess. And so I got really into chess, and he and I were sort of beavering away. We were pretty even for a while, then he started beating me badly. I remember going down to the village and I bought this giant 400-page book entitled Pawn Play, just pawns. And so we would go to these chess tournaments, and it was kind of neat to be on, a lot of good online chess. There's a whole domain about chess that you might not know about. It's called Freestyle Chess. Bring anything you want. You want to bring 3 grandmasters? Go ahead. You got Deep Blue? Go at it. Anything. It's very interesting who wins. It's not the computer. It's not the grandmaster. For about a 5-year stretch, the winning entry was 2 guys who weren't even grandmasters. They were good. They just weren't grandmasters. They had 3 different chess programs. One of them they'd bought from Radio Shack. 2 were pretty high-end, but 1 was just good at a certain part of the game. And then an incredible process. They knew when to use human intuition, when to use which piece of software, and they dominated the chess world. They would beat either Garry Kasparov or Deep Blue. So it's not about people versus machines. It's people, it's machines, it's technology, it's the interface. This is what we're trying to do for our advisors, and whether that's a goals-based planning tool or a behavioral finance questionnaire that we score. We've got an iPhone account opening tool that's coming out soon. We've got this pretty cool mortgage window where advisors and soon clients can look into the mortgage process from initial application to underwriting and see where it is progressing through the process. And so for us, that's where we really think the winning is going to be. So I'm going to stop there, Tony, if it's okay, maybe take some questions. I got a closing point I want to make about how great it is to be in a commodity business for people who are good at it.
Scott's got a microphone there. Anybody else?
Any questions?
I got one on the robo stuff. So,
Go ahead.
So based on what you were saying, the threat's sort of somewhere, from here to here. Where do you see the level of advising the threat? And is it a threat? Or is it something we should work with? Or are guys not process or not to sort of figure out how to use it? I think right now, when I see those companies, they absolutely need advisors. They can't get the assets to make themselves scalable right now. But do you think they just want to use advisors for a time and then later?
Well, we're firmly convinced that sophisticated clients want a person. In fact, when we've done next-gen surveys and asked their kids who are 18 to 30, that's the group for us, important financial decisions are one of the things that they think will be the last they'll want to do with a machine. So, yeah, I think the discussion we have with our advisors is our UInvest platform, which right now does transactions. It'll have portfolios soon. What I've said to our advisors, it's going to have everything except you, and you're worth it. And we'll serve clients who want to be served that way well. But we're very convinced that people with assets will want a person when it's important. And I think that's certainly true in a bull market when the technology is working. I think in a bear market, when you start to see the occasional glitch based on volume, I think it'll be even more true. Yes?
JPMorgan's always been very committed to a global customer base, and I think you've held true to that. What do you think about the trends in the industry in the U.S. over the last few years for advisors to have less access to international products and markets, and do you see that trend changing at some point?
So is this for advisors to have a global portfolio and global, yeah. Yeah. I think you need to be global. I think there are opportunities around the world, and there are threats from outside the U.S. And so I think that's a two-way street. I think it's hard to be relevant to clients without a global perspective. We're fortunate to work in an enormous market here, and to live in a country with rule of law and all the benefits that come from being part of this great country. So I think you can probably be effective for clients with only a domestic perspective, but I think to really serve sophisticated clients and be truly world-class, I think a global perspective is key. I wouldn't overplay it. I think global capabilities, but mediocre local service will lose to outstanding local service where your product set is primarily local. I think in the end it's about, this is a one client at a time, one advisor at a time business that I think is hard to do in scale. So I think you win and lose at that point of sale with an advisor. I think it's a game of inches. Okay, so thanks. I'm going to close with this, Tony, and then you can host cocktails for the rest of the evening.
There's one more.
Oh, sure, sorry.
You see a lot of investing saying we're not going to invest in a particular company because they're not eco-friendly or green-friendly or for other political reasons. Have you all done any research to see if you take that position, you get benefits from your customers saying, we're glad the company's taking a political position, or is the answer, we need to invest for the best return?
We're very open to our clients investing with us how they want to. We have some of what I guess you could call socially responsible, kind of depends on your politics, but socially responsible investing. Many clients are willing to sacrifice return in return for feeling really good about where their money's invested. And then others would have a view that over time, the market will reward those companies, and so there actually isn't even a return penalty. So we get it, and we're responsive to that.
That stat you had about 55% satisfying.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I got it from the Capgemini 2018 Wealth Survey, and it's their stat. I could probably tell you afterwards what page it's on, but only 55% of high net worth to ultra high net worth families are happy with their wealth provider. It was a surprisingly large number of dissatisfied people. Previous stats I'd seen showed a much higher level of satisfaction. I also think people are much more likely to, and to me it's not the clients who complain. That first boss I had, that mentor of mine, he had a great point, which was, when clients complain, they're giving you a gift. Unwrap it carefully and take great care of it, because it's not the clients who complain who kill you. Like, if I change dry cleaners, I'm not going to go and complain, I'm just going to leave. So I think we might overestimate the level of client satisfaction. I always feel like every client out there has got one issue. We just can never give them a second one. And we better be all over that first one. So I think there is a simmering level of dissatisfaction out there that I think the Capgemini survey, I'm not sure how they phrased the question, but I think they tapped into it more than some of us might like to think.
What do you think is causing that dissatisfaction? These are pretty much sophisticated.
Yeah, it comes from three things, is our sense, in the marketplace at large. One is that they want personalization, they want lower fees, and they want full breadth of product. So they want it personalized, they want it free, and they want it all. That's a tough business model. But so I think you got to either be great at one of those or figure out whether your organization can really deliver all three. But it seems to tie back to those things: personalization, cost, and I think Tony made a great point about discounting that I think is. I learned a really great lesson in Japan. You walk into pretty much any store or restaurant, and it's enormous sticker shock. It was certainly sticker shock at 82 yen to the dollar. It's a little less sticker shock now at 110, but it's shockingly expensive. But that's the price. Value to me really is quality and service minus the price. And an experience you'd have all the time in Japan is, it would look expensive, but the quality of the product and the service are so great, you leave thinking, that's a great deal. And this is in an incredibly regulated, rules-based place. So I reject the notion that regulation and client experience are somehow on opposite sides of the spectrum. They've certainly figured out in Japan, and maybe the most rules-based society in the world, to give outstanding client value. And it's not because it's cheap, but the quality and the service are worth it. So I think that's the real value proposition. It's in quality and service. Yeah.
What are the unique challenges in terms of talent pool, the independent space? Where do you
Yeah.
How does that affect the balance?
So the question, if you can't hear it, is talent pool, as people go from, and the trend seems to be from big firms to independents, how do you see it? We're in a somewhat unique position, which is we have 474 advisors as of today. We're not that interested in being very big. I don't know at what size you'd lose the ability to really be a boutique. The hard part for us isn't harnessing the strengths of a big firm. The firm's set up to send that to us, and we contribute back. The hard part for us is making sure we do the fast part, the fun part, the personal part, the answer your phone on one ring part, and that, I just don't know that you can do that north of, I don't know the number, but it's certainly people you hire one at a time. If it's 550 maybe, but it's not 1,000. So there are certainly large-scale trends at work, but I also think there's always a handful of people who want to try to deliver on that boutique meets global 7 days a week challenge. Yeah.
Chris, of those 474 advisors, how many are younger than 30 years old? And do you have any fear about your aging sales force? And I don't think you're investing in a training program. But what are you doing to attract on that wealth transfer? They're not going to want to deal with that advisor. Are you taking that far out?
Yeah, for me, it's a great question. For me, that wasn't sort of year one stuff for me on the job. Now that I'm in year two, I'm thinking a lot about it and the demographics of our advisor base facing off against the clients and the wealth transfer that's going to happen in the next 3 to 10 years, and how do we position ourselves to be able to capture it. And it will need to be a younger cohort of advisors. We're challenged, frankly, to have the training program of old, where there'd be 1,000 people in a training program and only 100 of them make it. That works, it barely works at 1,000. It doesn't work at 100 or 20. The numbers are so small you might end up with 0 or 4. That you can't run your business that way. So we've got some other ideas around how we can create really capable advisors in the 25 to 35 year category, likely partnering with senior advisors, but there's we're working on sort of a curriculum there. We benefit enormously because the private bank is great at training people. It's a great school. So to have access to that and run some people through it is probably going to be what our model is. It's a significant challenge. I think everybody faces it. Yes?
Do you see very different levels of stickiness between high net worth and ultra high net worth customers?
The ultra high net worth model is almost like a B2B type interaction, usually with an advisor. And the advisor plays a role that's kind of the client, but also kind of disintermediating you from the client. So you really have two clients. It's a different kind of buying behavior. It has some pluses, but it's also got some minuses. We'd prefer to be direct, but certainly recognize that our biggest clients are going to want to have an advisor because they need the in-house complexity. That said, I do think that the street left the door open for the rise of the family office by not doing a great job serving clients. I think the street lost a lot of trust in the structured note issues during the financial crisis. The street the statements aren't great, and the street probably hasn't offered easy-to-use aggregation. And those are three things that advisors do. I'm sitting next to somebody over here who I'm pretty sure does those things for his clients at his family office. Trust, aggregation, expertise, and really fully aligned with the interests of the client. And that's where we're supposed to be, but I think overall we left that door open as an industry, and people filled it.
You know, of the 475 reps, most of those are teams versus sole practitioners, and what's your opinion on that mix?
Teams seem to outperform per capita for us. We're open to people doing it their way, but it does seem like there's a team construct. Sometimes it's an outside person, inside person. We'll have a more experienced junior, some family members, but teams seem to be that said, we're very open to sole practitioners too, who tend to have a team that's a vertical team in support.
Quick question. I'm not going to hold you to it, but let's just say things stay status quo. Are you guys committed to staying in broker protocol?
Yeah, great question. We are. We are. And it's not because I particularly like some loose arrangement of competitors. When I first heard about it, it sounded kind of odd to me. And I get it, and I think it was extremely well explained, the history of it. So we are committed to it, but what's within that is we're committed to being a place where advisors want to work, and where advisors believe they can best serve their clients. And I think it's often depicted as a power balance between the firm and the advisors. I think that's flawed in several respects. First, I know who's going to win that one, the advisors. That'd be like the coaches and the players. The players are going to win. There's a third dimension to that, which is clients. Clients want to be served by their advisor at the firm that the advisor feels like he or she can serve them best, not where they're currently locked down with some garden leave or non-solicit. So which I think is just a delay tactic anyway. So the reason we're committed to it is because we're committed to being a place where our advisors believe that they can do the best job for their clients today. And if they don't, then we don't deserve to have them.
Yeah, hi. The name recognition, the reputation, basically the overall cachet of JPMorgan is pretty much without parallel. However, there's clearly a distinction between the JPMorgan Private Bank and JPMorgan Securities, and I'm just wondering, I know it's been evolving since they took over the Bear Stearns operation, but in terms of crossover products and services, how do you see that integration going and really getting the reputation of the private bank to filter down to the securities area?
So a couple things about that. When I was in this new product job, my boss called me to his office during the financial crisis. I think it was day 2 of the Bear Stearns thing, and he said to me, hey, it's a merger. Shit happens. You're getting a co-head. Like a co-head. It's the lamest structure ever. Never works. Only Wall Street firms try it. And from Bear. Huh. I said, look, I'm not going to thank you, but I'll make it work. So a guy from Bear came over with 5 or 6 people of his team. And I got to tell you, they were smarter than my team. They were more creative than my team. They were more entrepreneurial. Because at Bear Stearns, you had to be. The phone didn't ring. You better be awesome in that first meeting, or you're never getting, because you're never getting another one. So they took our team to, frankly, a much higher level. And one of the reasons I felt comfortable going to Japan was because this guy and his team were so good, I felt the business was in better hands with him than with me after 2 years of working together. So there was something about that DNA that I learned a lot from early on. Right now, our team's about 30%, maybe 28% Heritage Bear Stearns. So that's kind of the background to it. In terms of the different channels, there's full commitment from our management for all 4 of those platforms. We frankly have a fairly modest U.S. market share, one that our chairman would love to see us grow. We're each running our own race, but we have access to all essentially the same stuff. They're kind of different sports, and clients will affiliate with UInvest for the technology, with Chase, I'm simplifying, Chase for the location and the service, the private bank for the institution and the team, and with the Jpmorgan Securities thing for the brand, but primarily it's for the advisor, and that's who our clients are really essentially hiring. All right, Tony, let me wrap it up. We talk about being in a commodity business, and I love a commodity business. It's my favorite time of a business because you're not competing on price and product. Quality differences become huge. It's kind of a shakeout of the committed. So I want to just close with something that I think you'll be sort of surprised to hear about what people will pay for something that seems like a commodity when it's just better. So I've done a lot of different things, and so I've had the benefit of different jobs and different geographies. That said, I am a creature of habit, and I have 2 kind of deep personal habits. One is I have the exact same breakfast every morning. I've had the same breakfast every morning for over 30 years. I just love this breakfast. I see no reason to change. But the other is that when What is it? It's two scrambled eggs, sliced avocado if you can get it. That's kind of an extra. Bacon, extra crispy. Half a grapefruit and a bowl of blueberries. And I have it every single day. It's awesome. You should try it if you haven't. I'm happy to take you to breakfast sometime, Jeff. But the other is that when I ever exercise or pretty much any recreational activity, there's a hat that I need to wear that's the black Nike Featherlight hat. I don't know if you've seen this hat. It's an awesome hat. I wasn't even a hat guy until I found this hat. The thing's awesome. But with 4 kids and 3 young men, they're always taking my hats. So I decided I needed to reload on the hats and went to Amazon to buy the hat. This is probably a year ago now. And it comes in 17 colors. I don't know why. I only want the black one. And it's $22, Amazon Prime. You can get them the same day. So I decided I'm going to buy 4 of these and hide them so the guys don't know where they are. So the hat shows up, and we'll call this hat 2. The reason we call it hat 2 is it's not the same hat. It looks like the same hat. If I put them on the counter, they would be totally indistinguishable to you. But they're not the same hat. The new hat is a little cheaper. The brim's a little floppy. It's got some stitching on it. eBay. I'll just go and I'll find the old hat on eBay. So here's a hint. I'm not the only person looking for the old hat on eBay. So take a second and think about, for a hat, right, what could be $100? Anybody else? Ready? $600. This is up from $450. I bought none. I'm thinking about selling my hats, actually. I'm on the other side of the market. There's a guy who had 10 of them, runs a tennis shop down in Texas. I've been trying to get him to sell me 3 of them direct. He won't. They were $450, and then I went to print this slide. Now they're up at $600. So I think this is what we all want to be. We all want to be hat 1. This is just a hat. But it's better. And the grim economist view of a commodity is it's all the same. What it also means is if you deliver a product or service that's better, you'll get all the business, and people will pay a lot for it. So, hey, if people will pay $600 for a hat, think what they'll pay for you. So, Tony, thank you. Appreciate it.